Have you been thinking about going back to school to earn a PhD? Or maybe you're in the corporate world wondering if higher education is your next big move. I have to share with you that when I was in my late 20s, I wanted to go back to school for my master's. And I started one class and then I got pregnant with my son. And I was super sick the first 3 months of my pregnancy. And that was the end of my going back to school to get my master's degree. But that's just a lesson, right? I chose at that time to not pursue the master's degree because I had a baby and I wanted to dedicate myself to my child. And I was working full time at the time. So fast forward 26 years, I am now 55 years old, and I still think about going back to school. And so if I'm thinking about it, I know probably other people are thinking about it. And today's guest definitely has conversations with people that think about going back to school. So if that's the case, if you are thinking about going back to school, then today's episode is definitely for you. We are going to dive into how to navigate the challenges of completing a dissertation. So obviously this is if you're doing a PhD, and whether you're in the thick of it or considering a career pivot into academia. Again, this conversation is going to be great for you. So just to welcome you, thank you so much for being here on the No Woman Left Behind. I'm Rosie Zelenskas. I am your host. And as always, we are here to help you take the next step in your career. And believe it or not, going back to school, even though you may think that you're not going to be earning money, if that's the case, it's still a next step because you are developing yourself further. So again, whether it's climbing that corporate ladder or making that bold move to go back into higher education, that would be amazing. And I haven't said this out loud yet, but one of my bucket lists is to go back to school to get my master's degree. And it will happen someday, but it's been in the back of my mind, and it's a thought that comes back more and more in my life. Today, we're going to be talking about why pursuing a PhD can be an exciting yet very challenging endeavor and how to pivot for corporate women. And today we have Dr. Jen Harrison. Dr. Jen helps students navigate the process without feeling overwhelmed. We'll also dig into some actionable tips for staying motivated and organized. Being organized is huge for these types of degrees. And these tips are going to be useful no matter where you are in your career journey. So by the end of this episode, you'll know whether a PhD might be the next step for you, the next right move for you, or if maybe staying the course of at what you're doing is what you need to do. And you'll have some great strategies for tackling the dissertation process. If you're already on that path, Dr. Jen tells me that a lot of students that are in that dissertation process are just not guided well enough by either the professors or mentors, whatever. So this conversation is really important if you're in that process. So let me introduce you to Dr. Jen Harrison. She is a dissertation coach with over a decade of experience helping students, especially first generation ESL and non-traditional students, achieve their academic goals. So here's a fun fact about Dr. Jen. She jumped straight from undergrad to a PhD. So she's lived this experience firsthand. Plus, she's got some fantastic insights for anyone thinking about making that leap back into higher education. So let's dive in and hear how Dr. Jen makes the daunting dissertation process easier to manage. Stay tuned. Are you ready to accelerate your career? Whether you're just starting out, making your move up the ladder, or ready to take the fast lane, there's one question you need to ask yourself. Where do I stand? Introducing the Promotion Readiness Quiz. In just a few minutes, discover if you're an emerging leader, a progressive pro, or a career trailblazer. Get tailored tips and strategies to help you grow, elevate your skills, and move forward faster. Curious? Take the quiz now and step into the next chapter of your career with confidence. Unlock your potential today. Your career breakthrough starts here. Take the Promotion Readiness Quiz now. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today. Are you doing well today?
I am, thank you. Glad to be here.
Good, good. Okay, so Jennifer, you're a dissertation coach, and we've had many different types of coaches on the podcast. So tell me a little bit about what does a dissertation coach do?
Sure. So a lot of students, when they get into a graduate program, they encounter a lot of challenges. They usually have a supervisor or more than one supervisor who's been assigned to them to help. But supervisors don't offer a lot of support. They expect students to work very independently. They can only meet, once a month maybe, or once every couple of weeks. They don't review work very quickly. And so students can end up feeling a little bit lost. They're not quite sure what they're supposed to do. Maybe they lose motivation or they're not used to working independently. So as a dissertation coach, my job is kind of to be the supervisor, but much more available than most supervisors are. So I'm there to help students with everything from staying on track and setting goals to reviewing their work, letting them know if they are on the right track. Sometimes they don't know what should be in a particular section of a dissertation, so I coach them on what that content should look like. So I really do the spectrum of everything from motivation and accountability through self-care and then also writing and research.
Okay. And are you hired by the university for the graduate students, or are they hiring you individually?
The students are hiring me individually.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So you're just another added resource for students in like graduate studies that are trying to get that. Is it a master's and a PhD or just a PhD?
It can be both. So I've worked with a few master students. Most of the students who come to me are PhD because the pressures are just that much higher at that level.
And so tell me a little bit about how you specifically help these graduate students, because I know with the world changing, a lot of people went back to school. And so I think it would be a great way for you to maybe give us one or two examples of your clients and how you were able to help them.
Sure. So the vast majority, and I can think of 5 or 6 at the moment that I'm working with who fall into this category, are the students who they're not quite sure what they should be putting down on the page. And they're not really getting a lot of clarity in terms of supervisor feedback. So what I tend to do with those students is we start pretty much at the beginning. We take whatever their concept is for their dissertation, and we do an exercise that helps them brainstorm that topic and how they're going to turn that into a research project. And we make sure that all the pieces line up. So we'll sit down and we'll throw ideas back and forth. I'll ask them a lot of very pointed questions about what they're doing and why and how, and write down their answers for them so that they're free to think and use their brains and ramble back and forth. And I'm pulling out the important stuff and writing it down for them. So that's kind of where we start. And then from there, it's usually a case of taking the guidance and the rubrics and so forth that their institution has given them and saying to them, all right, we need to start in this place. Here's a blank page. I'm going to put some prompts on it for you. I need you to fill in this. Then send it to me. I'll read it. I'll tell you where you've still got gaps, where you need to make something stronger, where something looks really good and you should model the rest of your writing on it. And so we'll build the dissertation up in stages in that way, kind of moving through each section. We start with the big ideas and then we break it down and get it onto the page for them. They will often then submit it to their supervisor. They'll get feedback and I'll help them understand what the feedback means and how they should address it on the page. And so we do a lot of writing together and brainstorming together. I provide a lot of writing prompts and materials and resources, and sometimes even tuition on what should this look like? Where can I find resources? What does this mean? How do I address this? So that's kind of one category of student that really need the help with the whole project. I have another category of students who really are able to do that stuff by themselves, but they just find they can't make themselves sit down and do it because there's nobody cracking a whip. So with those students, I tend to meet them less frequently. but we'll meet and we'll set a goal. This week, you're going to work on this and you're going to show it to me by this date. And then they feel like they have somebody watching over them. And so they're more inclined to actually do the work.
Got it.
And then there's a whole nother category of student, and there's some overlap here, but there's a category of student who just struggle with feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, because they're not getting that support that they need. So they feel really down, and that's more emotional than it is necessarily competence. And so that's the other side of things that I do, which is I'll meet with students and say, no, I've read your work. It looks really good. You don't need to feel sad about this. Or when that person said that to you, they were bang out of line. That's not something they should be saying. You don't have to be sad about that. Or even, right now, the reason you're struggling to sit down and work is that you haven't eaten and you haven't slept, and I can see you're tired. You need to go take a nap, and then you're going to feel better. Because sometimes they do just need someone to be mom for them for a little bit. So that's kind of the 3 areas that I cover. And some students it's just one, and some it's all 3.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So in general, obviously you have experience because you were a graduate student yourself, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So you are using all of your knowledge and your expertise to help this particular group of graduate students. And I would imagine that the university doesn't think that they have to provide as many resources because they're like, oh, you're already a graduate student. You can figure it out. Yet they don't necessarily have all the tools that they could use in order to get them through that finish line. So what are some, and I know you already talked about some challenges they have, but what are some challenges that you would say people have even deciding to do a graduate program?
I think the top one when it comes to deciding to do the program is that students tend to be very driven. So they know they want to do something more. They want to do something extra. They want to push themselves. A lot of them have a sort of short-term goal in mind. I want a promotion, or I want to start my own business, or, I finished one degree, but I'd like another one. But a lot of them don't think through to the long-term mission. So there is a perception that getting another degree is better. It makes you a smarter person, or it makes you a more competent person. And so that ends up being the goal. But a degree doesn't really work like that. There are lots of different ways to become a smarter person or a more competent person, and a degree may not be the right choice for everybody. So I think that is the top challenge, is knowing why you want to do that degree, making sure it's the right choice. And that has to be thought through before you sit down and start it. So that's kind of one piece of the puzzle. And I love it when I get people early enough that we can actually think that through. Sometimes they're already in there. It's very rare that they can't finish, but sometimes I do wish I was able to say, oh, I wish you had taken this other path instead, because this one was hard for you. And then the other part of it is finding the right program, because there are so many options out there now. There are online degrees and hybrid degrees, and you can, live in Canada, but do a degree in Hawaii. That it's just, there's so much, and some options are definitely better than others, not in terms of prestige necessarily, although that's true too, but in terms of the actual support you're going to get, how well the program is designed, how qualified the instructors are. And it's hard for you to find that information out. So knowing how to evaluate a program, I think, is really important as well.
I think so. Imagine a space where your career aspirations are supported by a community that truly understands your journey. A space designed for women like you, ready to elevate their careers. Our monthly membership isn't just about career advancement. It's about growing confidence, gaining clarity, and building lasting connections. From expert training and monthly workshops to a custom career roadmap, everything you need to climb higher is within reach. Join a supportive community where group coaching and networking turn your professional goals into achievable milestones. Celebrate your wins, big and small, with a network of women who are as invested in your success as you are. Are you ready to unlock the leader within? Join us, and let's be brave, be bold, and take action together. I think so too. At one point, I know I was looking to do my master's degree, and then I got pregnant with my child, and then I was really sick for just with morning sickness and stuff. So I couldn't I finished my class, but then obviously life, working full time and babies and whatever. And it's interesting because I myself have been looking for programs that are specifically designed for understanding what is happening with women's culture in the workplace. So there's a lot of like leadership programs, and I've looked into a lot of them. I've had several conversations with people like institutions, and they're like, no, we can help you become a better leader, but we're not exactly doing how the culture is changing because so many more women are in C-suite levels and stuff like that. So you're absolutely right when you say that you have to find the right program that is meeting your needs, because everybody's trying to give me executive presence training or negotiation. I'm like, I don't need that. I'm more looking into who's researching all of the results that are happening from all these women, elevating in the world. So, and I haven't been able to find it yet. So if you know of anything, let me know. Now, when you yourself were kind of going through your program, tell me a little bit about your story. Like, how did you end up being a dissertation coach? Because this is very niche down. So tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are today with this.
Sure. It's been a winding path. I will say that. So I went to university in the United Kingdom. So the setup there is a little bit different to the US and Canada. But I finished a degree in English literature. I was enjoying myself so much that I decided I wanted to go on to graduate studies. And my professors felt that I was good enough that I didn't need to do a master's. So I actually went from undergraduate straight into PhD. And I had an amazing supervisor who didn't just want me to finish the PhD, but he wanted me to be really trained as an academic. He taught me how to be a researcher and how to think like a researcher and the things I needed to do to become a career researcher. So he really gave me a good setup. And then, much to his disappointment, I did not move directly into becoming an academic. Life happened. I got married. I moved to another location. I still worked in universities, but sometimes I was doing administrative work. Sometimes I was doing kind of adjunct teaching. So I stayed in universities. I was teaching graduate students. I was doing kind of research on the side here and there. And then I was also trying to earn a full-time living doing other things. And eventually it became clear that wasn't going to work very long. You need to pick one thing or the other. And I completely pivoted. I went into teaching secondary school. And that was really, really important for ending up where I am now, because a lot of university professors, a lot of researchers are excellent at their research, but they're not good teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Training to be an actual teacher in a school, in a classroom, was what taught me how to actually be a good teacher. So I did that until my kids were born. And then after my kids were born, I stopped for a little while. They needed a lot of attention. They're two boys that liked climbing the walls, literally. So they required all my attention for a while. And that was still in the UK, but my family all lived over here. And eventually we made the decision to move back here to the States. And so when we came back to the States, I went back into teaching in higher education. And I taught there for 5 years. Again, teaching writing, teaching research, working with dissertation students. And then the pandemic hit, and the pandemic shook everything up. And that seemed like a good time to pivot again. And what I was seeing was that there were a lot of students who needed that help. They needed somebody who was a teacher and who had been through the experience and knew how to do good research. And there's not a lot of people out there that fill all of those gaps.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I made the decision to leave higher education and to start my business. And that's where we are today.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And so those are really good skills for you to have. So not only the teaching, the research, and then of course you went through the whole program yourself. So if someone was trying to figure out whether they're in the right path in their dissertation, assuming they're doing their PhD, like where would they even start to, and again, if not getting that support that they need, like how would they start figuring out what is the next best thing for them to do?
I think diagnose where it is you're struggling. That can be hard because sometimes you're struggling in so many different areas and you're getting such negative feedback that you're not sure, am I struggling with the whole research? Am I just a poor writer or a writer who needs practice? Maybe I'm neither of those things, but I just need help setting goals and managing my time. So you've got to diagnose where it is you're getting stuck. And sometimes you can do that by yourself. Sometimes you can do it with a friend or family member. Sometimes you need a coach to actually listen to you pour out all your troubles and then say, all right, here's where I see the problems might be. But I think that's the first thing. And a lot of coaches actually offer a free first session or a free taster session. That if you ever sign up for one of those, that's a good place to do that. Ask the coach to help you diagnose what actually it is that you need. If you have a supportive supervisor, they can also sometimes help. You can say to them, look, I know it's not your job to fix all these problems for me, but at least tell me, should I be going to the writing center? Should I be hiring a coach? Should I be looking for a professional proofreader? What is it I actually need to help me get unstuck at this point?
Got it. And so how do people even find you? Like how does a graduate student know to even look for a dissertation coach?
Yeah, that's tricky because a lot of the universities don't like to tell students what supports are out there. And there is this perception that it might be cheating. It's not, any more than a football or having a football coach is cheating. Yeah. Typically, my students find me either because they've searched on Google, they've gotten desperate and they've searched for help, like just a general call for help. Sometimes it's through platforms like Twitter or LinkedIn, where they are seeing kind of helpful comments being made, or they put out a cry for help that I've responded to. So that's another way that they find me. And then sometimes, and quite often, it's through referrals where one student, I've been able to help them and they've passed me on to other students who need help.
Okay. Now, I know that we talked about, obviously there's the imposter syndrome in the corporate world and, but there's got to be some kind of imposter syndrome going on when you're a graduate student trying to get this big, huge accomplishment done and you're struggling with your mindset. So let's talk a little bit about this. And I know you already mentioned it, but I want to specifically talk about it because the mindset is such an important piece of getting anything done.
Yes, it really is. So I see this all the time with students. It's probably one of the biggest obstacles that they face, that the external challenges can be overcome reasonably easily once that feeling that you can't do it is gone. So I think where this comes from is there is an external expectation that if you've made it through the application process and you've joined the program and you've probably done a few classes and done well in those and you've done well in your previous degrees, you know what you need to know. You're already prepared. You can do it, like you're already good enough to be in a PhD program. You know all the things. You can just go independently. But what isn't acknowledged in that is that a PhD program is a very different setup, and writing a dissertation is a very different setup to most of the rest of the higher education kind of process. So taking classes, you have an instructor there who says, here's your assignment. It's due on this date. Hand it in. Here's the rubric. The institutions don't necessarily acknowledge openly that this is something different. They do expect students to know what they're doing. And so naturally, the students themselves, they've done really well in their previous studies. They go into the program thinking they're going to have the same level of success with the same level of output. And then when things look different and nobody's saying to them, don't worry, this is different. You need to learn new skills. They think, oh, well, clearly everyone's expectation is that I should know what I'm doing. So if I don't know what I'm doing, there must be something wrong with me. Right. Because everybody's got this internal. Very few students are reaching out to others saying, hey, what's going on? Are you stuck too? I'm really stuck. Why does this not make sense? And because everybody else is not saying anything, you think, oh, well, someone else would be saying something. So it's a horrible vicious cycle where everyone assumes everybody else should know what they're doing and probably does know what they're doing. And so nobody gives anybody any help. Students end up feeling like, well, everyone else is able to do this. It's probably just me. I must not belong in this program. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have signed up for this. I can't finish it. I need to be done. I think that is the biggest challenge that I see from students. They come to me and they say, I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I've tried and I just keep failing and nobody else is having this problem. So I just don't belong here. Should I just quit? And of course, the answer is no. Everyone else is struggling too. I know because my career is based on this. Yeah. So I can confirm there's nothing wrong with you. You just need XYZ tools. Usually, once students have got the tools and they've applied them and they've seen some success, imposter syndrome just plummets. Like they suddenly realize, oh, A, I'm part of a bigger community of people who are going through the same thing. And B, it can be overcome. And, it doesn't work for every single person. Sometimes it takes a little bit more work to overcome that mindset. But usually, as soon as you can see that you're not alone and that you can succeed, that takes care of imposter syndrome.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that you said that because a lot of times women come to me and they're like, Rosie, I need to be more confident to succeed in my career. And I was like, well, really, you've heard that saying in the real estate industry. The saying is location, location, location. That's the most important thing. So in career advancement, it's preparation, preparation, preparation. And what I tell them is the more you prepare by creating your custom career roadmap with all the pieces that go into it, the more your confidence goes up. And it's kind of like that too, where you're saying the more the student knows that they're not alone and the more they're able to get that help and succeed, like you said, that imposter syndrome plummets, which is the exact same thing that happens to women in the corporate world as they are preparing. So, preparation is key. Once you have someone saying you're not the only one that's struggling because there isn't that community in the graduate programs, which you would think there would be, right? Because they're all intelligent adults and they're all trying to do the same thing. You would think that they would do, I don't know, meetups or something, just say, hey, what's everybody struggling with? That doesn't seem to be the case as much, right?
I mean, it is, but very erratically. So
Okay.
there are definitely some students that I've worked with who have had a group like that within their institution and they've joined it and it's been really helpful. It's not the whole picture because those other students may still not have all the answers, but at least they get the mutual support. But then there have been quite a lot of students who told me, well, those groups exist, but they're so toxic. When I join them, everyone's really competitive and, it just makes me feel worse when I go in and talk to people in that group. And then there are some places where they just don't want to join a group at all. Everybody is too busy. We haven't got time for that. That's, more above and beyond what I can provide. So it's very, very variable. If there was consistency in that, I think it would help students a lot more.
And do you work with students from one particular area or from all over the country, all over the world? Like how is your clientele set up now?
All over the world. The predominant locations are the USA, Canada, and the UK, which is where I have the most experience, obviously. And then I've got a student in New Zealand. I think I have another one in India. So yeah, it's been very kind of spread out, but mostly the US, UK, and Canada.
Got it. Okay. And so now what about once you actually work with a student and they're on their way to get their dissertation, they get their dissertation. Now, what happens if it's not accepted? What happens if they need to rewrite it? Like, walk me through that program because I have heard people saying, "Oh, I accept or I submitted my dissertation, but I had to go back and do some corrections or whatever." So, talk to us about that process.
Sure. Well, first thing to say is, I think all the time I've been teaching, I've only ever known one dissertation to not need any revisions. So
Oh,
it is, 98% of dissertations that go through the defense process will be told you need some revisions. That's completely normal. We expect it. Partially because that is one of the reasons you do the defense is for them to find any last little holes and pieces that need fixing. So that's kind of the first thing. We expect that to happen. In all the time I've taught, I've never known a dissertation to fail. And the reason for that is that you shouldn't be being sent to defense if your dissertation isn't ready. When I was a student, I knew one dissertation to fail, and that student insisted on going to defense when her supervisor told her she wasn't ready. So that tells you everything you need to know. If you have a decent supervisor and they're doing their job, you won't be going to defense with a dissertation that would fail. You have to work really hard to fail at that point. But it is very normal for them to say, you look good. We're happy to pass you, but we want you to fix this, 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 this.
Okay.
And so usually my coaching continues past defense up until the point where that student submits the final dissertation to ProQuest or whatever database it's going to go into. And they hit the publish button and they get the graduation award and they're done. And I send them a congratulations card and then we finish. And some of those students stay with me and they continue working with me to publish their dissertation as a book or to write articles or to, continue their careers as academics.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question. What does one do once they actually have their dissertation? Like, what is the next most natural step in the majority of graduate degrees that you work with?
so many different options. So it depends on if you want to be an academic, a researcher, or if you want to pivot and do something else. So I'd say probably about 70% of the students I work with don't want to be academics. They go into industry, or they go into the corporate world, or they open their own businesses. And so for them, they take the expertise and they translate that into something marketable or something that can be kind of developed further in the real world. So I hate using that phrase, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then for the ones who do want to be researchers or academics, they have the option of doing a postdoc, or they can look for a faculty position. Usually they need to, at that point, start producing further research and publishing that research, because that's what gets you the jobs.
Got it. Okay. So tell me a little bit about how your dissertation process was. What was your degree in, and how did you handle that whole process?
So my degree was in children's literature. So I studied children's books in the Victorian era, which has zero real world applications. Very few. I had an amazing experience. So like I said, I had a supervisor who really, really cared about training you well to succeed. I don't think I ever had imposter syndrome. I never had any challenges, because whenever I had a question or felt stuck or wasn't sure what to do, my supervisor was right on top of it. He would meet with me every week. So I guess it'd be a lot easier to answer that question if I had a terrible experience and said, I could really empathize. But really what it is that I feel so angry that other students don't have that support. I think Peter must have been very unusual. And at that time, he was less unusual. Now he would be, considered just, nobody does that. Who does that? Nobody has the time. Nobody has the resources. It's really sad. That is what a supervisor experience should be. There shouldn't be any need for a coach like me to exist. So I think there are bigger systemic issues in higher education that need sorting out. But my experience was that if you have those supports, you have an amazing experience and you're well set up for life. And so I want every student to have that.
Got it. And how did you select children's literature? How did you, what was your undergraduate degree in, and what was it? What interest primarily led you to select that particular niche to do your dissertation in?
So we're going to get deep into the English lit theory and context now. So I did an English literature degree, and I was very interested in the Victorian fin de siècle. At the time, we were just approaching the year 2000, and the kind of fin de siècle of our century. And I was very interested in how the end of a century brings big changes and shifts in mindset and culture with it. And one of the places that you see those shifts most is in children's books, because a lot of the time a children's book is meant to instruct as well as entertain. It's supposed to impart those cultural norms. And so my dissertation looked at the books that I had loved as a young reader, because I was a voracious reader as a child and still am. But I took the books that I had loved and I wanted to examine how they showed those cultural shifts.
Interesting. Is there one major insight I'm interested in the cultural shifts, because especially when you say around the turn of the century, things evolve and shift, culturally. So is there maybe one insight on children's books that you can talk about?
Yes, definitely. So it's the playfulness, where any particular children's book, a typical adult choosing a book for a child will assume that everything is on the surface. If it's a story about a balloon, it's a story about a balloon. If it looks like a book that talks about being polite and well-mannered, that's probably what it is. Usually there's something under the surface that's a little bit more subversive. And most of the best children's books that we have, the ones that have stood the test of time, have that underlying message, that kind of subversiveness underneath the surface layer message. So if you're a parent choosing a book, look at it real carefully before you give it to your kid.
Interesting. I love it. Well, thank you so much for that little tangent. And again, the reason why I thought it would be really good to bring you on and talk about, being a dissertation coach and how you can actually work with people is because people from the corporate space have left to go back into graduate school or are considering leaving the corporate world to go back into graduate school. What would you recommend for somebody that is in the corporate world, and they're trying to maybe pivot? You had several pivots in your career, pivot into either a master's degree or if they have a master's degree into a PhD program?
Sure. Okay. So first thing is work out. Is this really the best option? Or is there a different option that will get you where you want to go? So don't just think I want to do the next thing and pick PhD as the next thing. Work out what's the goal after that? What is it you're actually trying to achieve? Do you want to be, getting a promotion? Do you want to be opening a business? Because whatever you do has to give you the tools that you will need to get there. And a degree might not do that. So that's the first thing. Like brainstorm, is this the right choice? Brainstorm, how much are you going to struggle with it as a choice? If you're not a strong writer, if you're not great at working independently, if you are not good at reading or you don't like reading a lot, then it might not be the best choice. So assess your strengths and assess your goals. Then I think the next thing is to work out the right kind of program, as we've already talked about. And when you're trying to make that decision, you've got to consider your lifestyle needs. So what can you actually logistically do? But then just like the story you shared, you've also got to make sure that that program is going to deliver what you want it to deliver. So you can't just look at their advertising, because their advertising is going to tell you that they are the best program for you. And every single one of them is going to do that. And they'll give you various reasons why. But really, you need to work out when it comes down to the day by day, are they going to demand that I make 6 flights a year to their campus? Are they going to demand that I sit down every day at 6:00 for 3 hours? Are they going to demand that I do 18 hours of writing a week? So you've got to kind of get those details from them. And if they won't give them to you, don't go with that program. But get those details. What is actually going to be demanded of you day by day? And then what are they going to give you back in return? Are they promising you, like you said, a leadership qualification? Well, if you don't need a leadership qualification, even if they're in the right field, that's not going to work for you. Mm-hmm. So look at the instructors and what their specialties are. What are they researching? What are they publishing? Because that's where they're going to be able to bring strengths to your work. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is it going to be a positive environment for you or not? And the way to find that out is to talk to previous students, not to talk to the people trying to get you to sign up, because they will tell you that you will have an amazing experience. Obviously, that's, they want you to sign up. So try and find the people who are alumni and ask them, what was your experience like? Was the program well constructed and designed? Were the instructors supportive? Was there a good student community? Did you feel like you got what you paid for? So all those questions have to be asked, and they have to be asked by people who will give you honest answers.
Hmm. And do you think if I ask a university to give me like 2 or 3 names from students, or, put me in contact with other students, would they generally do that?
They might. Some of them would, and some of them might be more cagey about giving out personal details. But social media is your friend. Go on to hashtag academic chatter or hashtag academic Twitter on Twitter, or go to Facebook groups that are for researchers or academics and say, hey, has anybody done this program at this university? What were your experiences?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do this. All right. Wonderful. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for talking to us about this. Actually, I do have one other question. Do you have any inkling on how, I'm assuming you were coaching both men and women, right? So do you have any inkling, because a lot of times we say in the corporate space, men get more opportunities because they go to, sporting events, with other friends, or golfing or whatever with other men in the industry. Is there any specific difference that you saw between men and women going through the, as you were coaching them, or are they pretty similar in their struggles and their challenges at that time?
No, I think there is a big difference. I mean, the biggest one is that it's mostly women who come to work with me. And if I had looked at the research and made an educated guess, I would have said it would be the other way around, that men feel more confident asking for help and women feel like they ought to be able to do it all on their own. Well, my clientele tells me exactly is the opposite, that the men are much more cagey about asking for help with a dissertation, and the women are like, I need help. Let me go get that. So that's kind of one big one. And then I think the type of help as well. So the men will often reach out just to say, I just need to get this done. Can you just tell me how to do this? It's very concrete. the women are much better at recognizing the holistic side of the help. I need help staying on track. I need help with motivation. I'm not really quite sure how to do this. I'm struggling with the feedback. So they do kind of recognize the emotional side of it as well. So I guess what we're saying here is that the women are much more self-educated about what seeking good help looks like.
Got it. All right. Well, that's good. That's really good to know. All right. So is there, obviously we had a lot of conversation with many different tips, but is there maybe one actionable tip that you can leave the listeners with that can help them make those decisions, like when they're in corporate and trying to figure out if they need to pivot in any way?
I think the biggest tip for that and for anything else is to have a network of people who will support you and give you the answers and the help and the emotional support that you need. So whether you're trying to make that decision to go into a program, whether you're in one, whether you are thinking of doing one in the future or you did, whatever it might be, have the people around you who will help and who you can turn to help and feel comfortable doing that with.
Got it. Wonderful. All right, Jennifer. Well, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
This episode really resonated with me because I personally would love to go back to school. I have a passion for learning. And it's so funny because my husband teases me anytime that I get a community college catalog or a library catalog on all their classes. I'm eagerly reading through the catalogs and I want to see what they have to offer. So my husband just teases me because he's like, oh my gosh, you're such a geek, which I know I'm a geek and a nerd for learning. So I'm okay with that. Dr. Jen shared a ton of wisdom with us, and I hope that you are feeling as inspired as I am. I just want to talk about 3 things that highlighted the conversation. First, we learned about the importance of having the right kind of support when tackling big challenges. Whether you're considering getting your PhD or considering a career pivot, Dr. Jen emphasized that the right mentor or program can really help you stay on track and avoid feeling overwhelmed. Second, Dr. Jen shared that valuable tips on staying organized and breaking bigger goals into smaller, manageable steps is critical. She actually helps students create clear, actionable plans to tackle each part of their dissertation, which is a strategy that works both for academic and corporate settings. Now, I know for PhD students, they have a specific deadline to submit their dissertation. And if it gets challenged, they have to go back and rework it. So you want to make sure that you stay on track with all those due dates. Finally, the third thing that was a takeaway for me is that asking for help is crucial, whether it's from a coach, your supervisor, a peer. Dr. Jen pointed out that seeking guidance isn't a sign of weakness. It's a smart move to keep you moving forward confidently, especially in the corporate world when you think that asking a question is going to put you in a bad position because you maybe didn't understand what your manager asked you to do. But really going back and clarifying the directions is a sign of strength because you know that you didn't understand it. And it's okay to say, you know what, I wasn't really clear. I started working on the project. I wasn't really clear. Can you please re-explain whatever X project is? Dr. Jen leaves us with one actionable tip, and she says, build a network of people who can support you with the answers, help, and emotional backing. But these are people that have been through the process. Obviously, they're going to be better equipped to help you go through the process when they've already been through the process. So whether you're starting your PhD or making a big career move, having the right kind of support can be game changing. So this was an absolutely great conversation with Dr. Jen. And again, it inspires me to look into going back to school. So I hope that you feel inspired. If you're ready to take the next step in your career, if you're feeling stuck and you don't know what to do, take the promotion readiness quiz to find out exactly where you stand. You could be an emerging leader, a progressive professional, or a career trailblazer. And the quiz will give you some rough resources so that you can figure out what you need to do once you get your result. And while you're at it, check out the Unlock the Leader Within membership for a supportive community. And this includes women that are ready to grow, connect, and elevate their careers together. One of the things that I always talk about is for the membership is that I want you to be promotion ready. I want you to work on self-advocating with confidence. And then again, having and building a community of incredible, supportive women. All of the links for the quiz, the membership, and Dr. Jen's resources are on the episode website. So today's episode reminded us that preparation and support are key to overcoming challenges, whether it's a dissertation or a career pivot. With the right tools, you can face anything with confidence. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Jen. She was very inspirational. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.